Okay, so keeping up with this, I don't think I have to really build a case. I think if you go back and totally ignore that writer in his article, which painted him and Fenn to be such, or her, to be such great friends, I think you'll realize if you just go back to before Fenn died that there didn't seem to be any great closeness between Fenn and the finder, or the family and the finder, and I find that curious. I mean, after all, it's a stranger. Fenn said he didn't know the person. They apparently had an email back in 2018 that Fenn supposedly forgot about. But something happened that has given me a whole perspective on this that has been touched on, but hasn't been a big topic of conversation. Within a week after the fine being announced, I came across a written statement by somebody claiming that they were an associate of, well, they didn't claim they were an associate of Forrest Fenn. They were an associate of Forrest Fenn. I know that because I've actually read accounts of them with Forrest Fenn. I mean, they were an associate of Forrest Fenn. There's no doubt about it. And this person wrote in something that I saw that he knew about the location before. Forrest Fenn had told him the location of the treasure chest. So, you read that and you kind of go, wow, seriously. You do a little research, you find out this person's a real person. You do some confirmation of the data points in the document that you can track to the person, and you go, oh, they're a real person. Yeah, okay. And they're saying in this, they said a few things, but I'm going to stick with this as the point, the real important point. They said that they had known the location of the treasure chest. The only thing that was, and this was right after the find was announced by Fenn, they said that Forrest Fenn had told them, shown them the treasure location. Now, this person is someone who Forrest Fenn had worked with. I won't say much more than that. More of an associate, I think, than a friend. I'm not going to give their name, and I'm not going to give any information about the documentation I saw. You can believe me or not believe me, it's real. But what happened was, my confusion when I saw this was very minor. I took it right as I read it that this person had in fact been told the location. And even shown the treasure at the location, which I thought was rather amazing. But what bothered me was that I couldn't tell from reading it whether they had known before or after the solve. It was kind of like, did you know the treasure has been found? Oh, yeah, Fenn had shown me it before. He'd actually shown me the location. I actually saw the treasure. But when you read it, you're kind of like, and I'm not sure if I say that correctly. It was something like, I know the location. I could actually read it. Well, maybe this does clarify it. The person says they knew about the find and that Fenn had shown them. Well, see, then it's like, well, I had been shown it many times. I'm not sure. I guess that would infer that it was prior to the find. Anyway, the person's almost blasé about the fact that, well, of course I knew about the find and I'd been shown it. But I'm sitting there going, I'm thinking, well, I want to confirm that this was before or after the fine occurred, because obviously if it was before, that's a huge deal, right? I mean, if Forrest Fenn's been literally walking around telling people where the location is, or even showing them the location, that's a friggin' big deal. Or was this a case where the person, Forrest Fenn, it's someone he knows, he's an associate of. I think they're not necessarily friends, but I guess it's kind of like if you work with someone, I suppose you can certainly count him as a friend over time. And this person seemed to know Fenn over time. So, did Fenn maybe call the guy up and say, oh, by the way, I just want to let you know the fine, it was found, and by the way, it was just here. If you were ever curious, now I can tell you, but just keep it a secret. This person, by the way, makes it very clear they were sworn to secrecy. They were sworn to secrecy. You see how well that works, right? You're sworn to secrecy, you always feel like you can tell someone else. They always feel like they can tell someone else, and they always feel they can tell someone else. And that's going to be the linchpin in my case that I'm making. Interesting stuff, huh? Now, there are a number of things that come up. You might say, why would Fenn ever tell anyone, especially when it was still out there? You have to understand, and someone explained this to me. They said, you don't know what it's like to be rich, in so many words. And this was someone who wasn't rich either. But I was like, yeah. They said Forrest Fenn hobnobbed with people who were rich. He hung out with and associated with and had friends that were rich. Doug Preston, for instance, is, I'm pretty sure, rich. I'm sure he's a multimillionaire. He writes best-selling, or at least he writes successful books. I've never read one of his books. I might have to. There's something about the Kodak or something. People say it was kind of parts of that were used in the... There's so many subjects you can go off to in these videos, but right now I'm sticking with this, trying to figure out what happened at the end. Why would Forrest Fenn tell this guy or anyone else about the location? Because, as someone explained to me, if you're a millionaire, Fenn was a multimillionaire, folks, right? If you're a multimillionaire, he had objects in his house that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. His Sitting Bull peace pipe was worth, the last I heard, $1.1 million. Those are all things he owns. Those are all things that could be liquidated, sold. Those are assets. Here's a multimillionaire. He was a guy that went around handing out $100 bills to waiters and waitresses when he was at restaurants. Pretty cool guy to wait on if you're working in a restaurant. So the point this person made to me was, and it was eye-opening, they said, you don't understand. You think, well, why would Fenn ever tell someone like us, meaning the masses, right? The great unwashed. I'm overdoing a little bit, but you get my point. You go around, you tell the average guy who has not that much money, or he's got enough to live on, but he doesn't have the big money, right? You tell them, you're almost guaranteed someone's going to break that trust, assuming you ask him to keep it secret, and someone's going to run around and get it. But Forrest Fenn, when he's talking to people, other multi-millionaires, and this person, I believe, does have some money. Pretty much from what I can read about them, they have some money. Potentially quite a bit of money. And a big reputation. When you tell those kind of people, it's a little different. You're kind of in a club. The old Fitzgerald saying I had another video. The very rich are different than you and me. They live in a different sphere. They can travel. They can pop around from country to country on a whim. They live in these incredible places. They have these incredible homes. They're just different than we are. Their whole perspective on what's important for spending money on is different. They don't have the same concerns and worries that a lot of us have. They have different concerns and worries, but not a lot of ours anymore because they've superseded those concerns with the amount of money they have. When they get told a story about Fenn's treasure, and keep in mind they know him, I think Fenn could think these people are going to keep it a secret. I think he would think this guy's not going to go running around after I tell him and go running around in the wild looking for it. Or just returning to a spot that I've shown him. Now, some of you are probably saying, Eric, this just seems a little far out. Forrest Fenn told someone? I wonder if he didn't tell multiple people, folks. If he told one person, and I'm just telling you, I am not... Let me explain. I haven't gotten to the point I was going to make. I contacted this person, right? He's a real person, folks. He really exists. I contacted him and I said, very innocently, I'm sure this guy was just like, what? I contacted him and I said, hello, I've just come across this information where you said that Forrest Fenn told you where the treasure location was and showed you the treasure. Could you please verify for me, because I want to do a video about it. Now, folks, this is right after the find, right? I've been sitting on this for quite a while. I said, I would like to do a video about this. Do you have a problem with that? Because, well, the guy writes back and he goes, hell no. I'm paraphrasing. He says, I am giving you, I never wanted you to read this. This was not intended for other people to read than the original source. And so, again, I'm paraphrasing, but hell no, I'm not giving you permission to talk about that. Keeping in mind this person does have a reputation and has some money. But the main thing is he has a reputation. Not going to tell you what field he's in. I'm just going to tell you if he's... I mean, I don't really worry about my reputation because I don't have much of one. But this, for some people, it's a bigger deal than others, just to put it that way. And I persist. I go, well, wait a minute. I don't really need your permission. I mean, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of whether or not. I mean, in retrospect, this guy must have thought I was out of my freaking mind, which, you know, potential I am. I said, no, I don't really need your permission. I just, because, you know, it's out there and I've read it. I know the law and all that. And I said, but I just want to confirm whether it was before or after the fine was announced, because obviously if Forrest Fenn was running around telling people where the location was before the fine, that presents some pretty obvious problems. He writes back and he says, again, I didn't give you any permission and I'll sue your ass if you pursue this on privacy concerns. You know, at first I was a little, I think I wrote him back and I said something like, oh yeah, well, it wasn't that bad, but it was just kind of like, I don't know. But of course I never said anything about it. His main concern was, and I'm sure still is, he did not want the document shown. He did not want his identity known. He didn't really want, I'm sure he wouldn't even like me doing what I'm doing, where I'm kind of just giving you this overall concept. But the bottom line is I will never, his primary concern from a legal viewpoint was privacy. And I went and looked that up and I found that the privacy issue is, you can make a case for it in some cases in court. People have done it. People have succeeded. Sometimes they don't. But does Eric Johnson want to spend his money in a court of law finding out who's right in this particular instance against someone who has money? And I could go to court. I could pay for a lawyer. Do I want to spend my kind of money defending or fighting this thing? Hell no. And then I actually had a better thought about it one day I said, you know, this guy's actually right. If you write something and you provide it to somebody else in some fashion and that person lets the cat out of the bag, so to speak, I put myself in that position. I thought, if I had written someone, if I I put myself in the position of this guy and I said, you know, if I wrote something that I didn't want everyone to know and it got out, I would not want somebody publishing it. So I realized that not only it wasn't just this thing of, you know, push to and fro over who's right. He was kind of right. You know, I mean, I realized he is right. He's right to be concerned about his privacy. So that put the kibosh on it for the last 4 months that I just decided not to even mention it. And now that I'm mentioning it, I can absolutely guarantee you that I will never tell you who this person is, and I will never show you any documentation or anything. And I know for some people they're going to say, well, then we don't believe. I don't, you know, if you don't believe me, don't believe me. Here's the point, though, why I even told you this whole story. And don't even bother me with emails or messages or texts saying, can you just tell me? I will never tell anyone, folks, ever, who this person is or show you what I have, you know, the document, so to speak, that I have about this. That's not even important. What's important is my theory. My theory gets to the heart of why we have this strange juxtaposition of Fenn not congratulating the finder and the family not thanking the finder. It's like bookends. The beginning of the find, Forrest Fenn, in my opinion, for a guy who was extremely careful, I mean Forrest Fenn, a guy who was extremely careful about the way he wrote things and what he would omit or what he would put in or words that he would put in to trigger you or red flags that he would write, hoping you would notice them. For him to not thank the finder, I think was huge. I'm not the only one that thinks that. And then at the end, when they had the announcement by the Fenn family on the Santa Fe Trading Company, the old Santa Fe Trading Company, for them not to thank the finder, and at both ends of these bookends, Fenn and the family either congratulate the searchers or thank the searchers, but they never talk about the finder. What does that tell you? That told me very boldly, by omission, it was hard to ignore. They didn't really care for the finder. People have said, well, maybe they were making it clear there was no finder. You know, Forrest Fenn said there was a finder, okay? There's no point in saying there's a finder unless there either is one or you're retrieving it and you're making that story up about a finder to cover the retrieval. That I understand. But if you're going to say there's a finder and then omit congratulating the finder, I don't read a lot into that. I read it more like Forrest Fenn wanted us to believe that it was found by a finder, but he did not want to congratulate the finder. That's more of an emotional thing or a psychological thing. Could it mean he wasn't thanking the finder or could it mean he wasn't congratulating the finder because he knew the finder didn't really exist? Could be. Could be. But my theory for today anyway is different, and we'll get into that in part 3. So it looks like it's going to be a 3-parter today, folks. All parts are published the same day. I think this is very interesting, what I'm going to come up with in the next part, and then I'll be done for this particular series.